When people begin their journey of learning English, they usually ask a simple but very important question. What is the fastest way to learn? Many expect a complicated answer. They imagine special study methods, difficult grammar exercises, or long vocabulary lists that they must memorize every day. But the truth is much simpler and much more natural. The fastest way has always been, and will always be, listening. Listening is the first door that opens when we enter a new language. Before a child says their first word, they spend months and months listening to their parents, their family, and the world around them. They listen to the rhythm of the voice, the sounds of words, and the rise and fall of sentences. They do not understand every detail, but little by little, their brain begins to connect the sounds with meaning. This is the same process you must follow when you learn English. Listening is not only a skill to practice, it is the foundation that supports every other part of the language. When you listen, you are training your ears, but you are also training your memory and your confidence. You begin to recognize familiar words. You start to understand common expressions, and you notice how sentences are built in real communication. You may not understand everything at first, but each time you listen, you catch a little more, and this is exactly how progress is made. Learning through listening is also the fastest way because it connects you directly to real English. Reading and writing are important, but listening gives you the rhythm, the pronunciation, and the feeling of the language in a way that no textbook can give. It prepares you to speak, to think, and eventually to live in English. That is why in this lesson we will explore the true power of listening. You will see why it is the fastest way to grow, why it helps you more than memorizing rules, and how you can make it part of your daily life. Listening is often misunderstood by learners. Many people believe that listening means understanding 100% of what is said, but this is not the real nature of listening. Listening is not about catching every single word. It is about connecting with the rhythm, the sounds, and the patterns of the language. If you think about it, this is exactly how we learn our first language. Babies and children do not understand every word at the beginning. They listen for months without speaking, and slowly their brain begins to understand the meaning behind the sounds. When you listen to English, the same thing happens. At first, the sounds may feel fast and confusing, almost like noise. You may hear only one or two words that you recognize. But if you continue listening day after day, your brain starts to notice patterns. You hear that certain words are always used together, that sentences rise and fall in familiar ways, and that some expressions repeat again and again. Without studying a grammar book, you are already learning the real structure of English just by listening. Another important part of the nature of listening is that it works both actively and passively. Active listening means focusing with attention, trying to understand the meaning, and maybe even repeating in your mind what you hear. Passive listening happens when English is in the background, while you are cooking, walking, or cleaning your room. Even if you are not fully paying attention, your brain is still receiving the sounds and storing them. Both types of listening are valuable, and together they create a powerful environment where English becomes natural. This is why listening is not only practice, it is the most natural way to absorb a language. The more you listen, the more familiar English becomes, until one day you realize that the sounds that once felt strange Now feel clear and even comfortable. When learners begin their journey with English, one of the first things they try to do is memorize as many words as possible. They often buy a notebook and start writing long lists of vocabulary. Sometimes they use apps that show flashcards, or they repeat the same word 10 times, hoping it will stay in their memory. For a moment, this seems to work. They feel proud because they can remember the word table or happy or beautiful when they see it on the list. But very often, after a few days, those words disappear. When they try to speak, the words do not come. This is because memorizing alone is not enough. Memorizing is like taking a picture with your phone. You can see it for a moment, but without context, the memory fades quickly. Listening, on the other hand, is like living the moment. When you listen to words inside real sentences, your brain does not just record the word, it records the sound, the feeling, and the situation. Imagine you try to memorize the word hungry. You write it down 10 times. You repeat it in your head. A week later, you may forget it. But now, imagine a different situation. You are listening to a story, and the character says, "I am hungry because I didn't eat breakfast." Later, in another story, you hear someone ask, "Are you hungry? Let's eat something together." Each time, your brain connects the word hungry with a real situation. You can hear the tone of the voice. You understand the meaning from the context, and the word becomes part of your natural memory. That is the difference between memorizing and listening. Another problem with memorizing is that words without context are difficult to use. You may know the word decision, but if you only memorized it from a list, you may try to say, "do a decision," which is not natural English. But when you listen many times, you hear that people always say, "make a decision." This detail stays in your mind without effort because your brain remembers the sound and the pattern, not only the word. Listening teaches you the music of the language, the way words connect naturally. Memorizing cannot give you this music. Think about grammar as well. You can memorize the rule. Use ed for past tense. But if you only remember the rule and never hear it in action, it will stay as theory. Listening shows you how the past tense sounds in real life. You hear someone say, "Yesterday I walked to the park and listened to music," and your brain immediately connects the sound of walked and listened with past time. This is why listening is stronger than memorizing. It transforms information into living experience. Listening is also easier for your brain because the brain is naturally made to learn through sound. Think about songs. How many times have you remembered a song without trying? Sometimes the lyrics stay in your head even if you did not want them. That is the natural power of listening. It enters your memory more deeply and stays there longer because it feels like part of your experience, not just something you studied. Memorizing is useful for a short exam or for remembering a word temporarily. But if you want to truly speak, understand, and live in English, listening is the path. Words learned through listening are not just information. They are tools that you can use naturally in conversation. They are not floating in your mind alone. They are connected to sound, rhythm, and meaning. That is why listening will always be stronger and faster than memorizing. The human brain is designed to learn through sound long before it learns through rules or books. Think for a moment about how every baby in the world learns their first language. They do not sit at a desk with a grammar textbook. They do not write lists of words or study flashcards. They spend months and months simply listening. Their parents talk to them, their family speaks around them, and the child listens again and again. At first, the sounds are only noise, but slowly, the brain begins to notice patterns. It realizes that the sound milk is always connected with a bottle. It realizes that the sound sleep is connected with the soft bed. Without any formal study, the brain builds meaning directly from sound. This natural ability never disappears. Even as adults, we still learn faster through listening than through studying rules. When you listen to English, your brain is not only hearing sounds, it is building connections. Every time you hear a new sentence, your brain collects information about rhythm, intonation, and the order of words. Even if you do not understand every single word, your brain is still storing the pattern. Later, when you hear the same words again, your brain recognizes them more quickly, and the understanding becomes stronger. Think about music. Sometimes you listen to a song only once, and days later the melody plays in your head without effort. You may not even like the song, but it stays in your memory. This is the power of sound. The brain holds on to rhythm and melody naturally. Language works in the same way. The more you listen, the more the music of English becomes part of you. You may not notice it at first, but after weeks and months of listening, your speaking begins to change. You start using expressions automatically. You pronounce words more naturally, and you build sentences without stopping to think of rules. Another reason sound is powerful is because it connects with emotion. When you listen to someone telling a story, you do not only hear the words, you feel the emotion in their voice. If the voice is happy, sad, or angry, your brain remembers the words more strongly because of the feeling attached to them. Memorizing from a book does not give you this emotional connection. Listening does. It makes the words real, alive, and unforgettable. This is why you should not be afraid if you do not understand everything when listening. Your brain is still working. Even if you only understand half or even less, the sound is still training your mind. Over time, the pieces of the puzzle connect, and suddenly you notice that you understand more than before. It is not magic. It is simply the way the brain is designed to learn through sound. In the end, listening is not just practice. It is the most natural form of learning. It respects the way your brain works. It gives you patterns without effort, and it allows the language to grow inside you just as your first language did when you were a child. One of the biggest mistakes many learners make is believing that listening once in a while is enough. They watch a movie in English on Saturday night, or they listen to a podcast only once a week, and then they wonder why their English does not improve quickly. The truth is that listening works like exercise for your brain. If you go to the gym one time a month, your body will not change. But if you exercise a little every single day, your muscles grow stronger, your energy increases, and the results become visible. In the same way, listening every day is the secret that keeps your English alive and growing. Daily listening does not need to be long or complicated. You do not have to spend hours in front of a screen trying to understand everything. Even 10 or 15 minutes each day is enough to create progress. What matters is consistency. Think about watering a plant. If you give a plant 1 liter of water in one day and then forget it for a month, the plant will suffer. But if you give the plant a small amount of water every day, it stays alive and grows steadily. Your English works in the same way. Daily listening is the water that keeps your language alive. There is also a psychological benefit to listening daily. When you listen every day, English becomes part of your routine. It is no longer something extra or difficult. It becomes as normal as brushing your teeth or eating breakfast. And when something becomes normal, it no longer feels heavy. You stop asking, "Should I practice today?" Because practice is already part of who you are. This habit removes the pressure and replaces it with rhythm. Daily listening also builds momentum. The first days may feel slow because you are not used to it. You may only catch a few words, but after a week, you notice more. After a month, you recognize expressions. After several months, you can follow entire conversations. The progress may feel invisible day by day, but when you look back, you realize how far you have come. The beauty of daily listening is that it fits anywhere in your life. You can listen while you walk to school, while you ride the bus, while you cook, or while you clean your room. You do not need a special place or special time. English can travel with you in your pocket, through your phone, through headphones, through the world around you. Every moment becomes an opportunity to grow. This is why listening every day is not just good advice. It is the foundation of real progress. Language is not built in 1 hour of intense study. It is built in small drops of practice, repeated again and again, until English is no longer something you study, but something you live. Many learners worry about vocabulary. They think, if I only knew more words, I would speak fluently. Because of this, they buy dictionaries, download vocabulary apps, and try to memorize 10, 20, or even 50 new words in one day. But the problem is not the number of words you see. The problem is how you learn them. Words memorized from a list often disappear quickly from your mind. They stay for a few hours, or maybe a few days, but when you try to use them in real life, they are gone. This is why listening is such a powerful tool. Listening allows vocabulary to enter your mind in a natural way, and once the words are there, they stay much longer. When you listen, words do not come alone. They come inside sentences, inside conversations, and inside stories. This is important because your brain remembers better when it has context. Imagine you try to learn the word journey. You write it down 10 times and repeat it silently. After a week, you might forget it. But if you listen to a story where someone says, "My journey to the city was long, but I learned many things," your brain does not just remember the word journey. It remembers the situation, the feeling, and the sound of the sentence. Later, when you hear journey again, your mind makes the connection immediately. This is how vocabulary grows naturally, through repetition in real situations. You hear the same word in different contexts, and each time, the meaning becomes stronger. At first, you may not even notice. You hear the word once and it feels unfamiliar. The second time, you recognize it but still hesitate. The third or fourth time, the word feels comfortable, and suddenly you realize it belongs to you. You did not force it. You did not memorize it in a stressful way. You simply listened enough times until it became part of your natural language. Listening also teaches you how words connect with each other. You may memorize the word decision, but you might not know which verb goes with it. Do we do a decision or make a decision? Only by listening many times do you learn the natural combination. The same happens with phrases like listen to music, wait for the bus, or interested in something. These small details are difficult to memorize from a list, but they are easy to learn when you hear them naturally in sentences again and again. Another advantage is pronunciation. When you memorize silently, you may know the word on paper but not recognize it in real speech. Listening solves this. You hear how the word sounds, how it changes when connected to other words, and how native speakers pronounce it quickly. This makes it easier to recognize and to use the word yourself when speaking. In the end, vocabulary learned through listening becomes living vocabulary. It is not just knowledge in your head. It is a tool ready to be used in real conversations. You do not have to force it. It flows naturally when the moment comes. That is why listening is the most powerful and the most natural way to build vocabulary that lasts. One of the biggest challenges for English learners is pronunciation. Many students know the meaning of a word when they see it written, but they do not know how to say it correctly, or they do not recognize it when someone speaks quickly. This is because reading alone does not teach pronunciation. You can look at the letters, you can guess the sound, but English spelling is often very different from English pronunciation. The only way to truly learn how words sound is by listening. When you listen carefully, you begin to notice that words do not live alone. They connect with other words. They change their sound, and sometimes they almost disappear in fast speech. For example, when someone says, "What are you doing?" it often sounds like, "What you doing?" A learner who only memorizes from books may not recognize this sound, but a learner who listens often will understand it naturally because their ears have trained to recognize the real sound of English, not just the dictionary form. Listening also teaches rhythm and stress. English is not only about individual words, it is about music. Some words are strong, some are weak, and sentences rise and fall like waves. Think about the sentence, "I didn't say you stole the money." Depending on which word is stressed, the meaning changes completely. If you stress "I," it means someone else said it. If you stress "you," it means another person did it. If you stress "money," it means something else was stolen. You cannot learn this by reading. You learn it by listening to real voices, by noticing the melody of the language, and by feeling the emotion in the sounds. Another important part of pronunciation is imitation. When you listen many times, your brain automatically begins to copy. This is called the shadow effect. You may not even try, but your mouth slowly learns to produce the same sounds your ears receive. This is how babies learn, and this is how adults learn too. The more you listen, the more natural your speaking becomes, because you are copying the authentic model. Listening also reduces the fear of speaking. Many learners hesitate because they are not sure if they are pronouncing words correctly. But when you have listened to the same words hundreds of times, you feel safe. You know how they should sound, and your mouth can reproduce them with confidence. Mistakes will still happen, but you will sound much more natural than if you had only memorized words on paper. Think about songs again. Many people can sing entire songs in English without ever opening a dictionary. Why? Because they listened many times, and their mouth simply followed the sound. The same is true for pronunciation. Listening creates the path. Speaking follows it. This is why listening is not only for understanding, it is also the secret to clear, natural, and confident pronunciation. If you want to sound better when you speak English, the best place to start is with your ears. For many learners, English feels frightening. When they hear people speaking quickly, The words seem too fast and impossible to separate. In that moment, fear appears, and the learner thinks, I will never understand this language. But listening, practiced every day, slowly takes away that fear. Fear usually comes from the unknown. Imagine walking into a dark room. You cannot see anything, and you immediately feel nervous. But when you turn on the light, the room becomes familiar and safe. English works the same way. When you do not listen often, the language feels dark and confusing. But the more you listen, the more light you add, and the fear begins to disappear. At first, you may only catch 1 or 2 words, and the rest feels like noise. But over time, your brain starts to recognize patterns. You hear, "How are you doing?" And instead of confusion, you recognize the phrase. Each small success builds confidence, and confidence reduces fear. Listening also gives you trust in yourself. You realize that English does not need to be perfect to be useful. You see how people repeat themselves, pause, and use simple words. This shows you that communication is possible even with mistakes. The more you listen, the more English feels familiar. And when something is familiar, it is no longer frightening. It becomes part of your daily life. One of the best things about listening practice is that it can be part of your normal life. You do not need a classroom or a teacher. You can listen anywhere and at any time. The secret is to make it simple and regular so that English becomes part of your daily routine. You can start by listening to short podcasts or videos made for learners. Even 5 or 10 minutes a day is enough if you do it often. Choose topics you enjoy because when you like the content, it is easier to continue. Another easy way is music. Listen to songs you already like and read the lyrics while you listen. Over time, the words will become familiar and you will remember them naturally. Movies and TV series are also excellent, especially if you watch them with subtitles at first. Listen carefully to how the actors speak and notice how the words sound different from the way they look on paper. You can also listen while doing daily tasks. Play English audio while cooking, walking, or cleaning. Even if you are not focused 100%, your brain is still collecting sounds and patterns. The key is not the amount of time, but the consistency. If you listen every day, English will no longer feel like something outside of your life. It will feel normal, natural, and close to you. Many learners want to improve their speaking as quickly as possible. They focus on grammar books, vocabulary lists, and pronunciation exercises. But they often forget one very important truth. Speaking is the mirror of listening. You can only say what you have already heard many times. If your listening is weak, your speaking will also be weak. But if your listening is strong, your speaking grows naturally because your brain is already full of the sounds, rhythms, and patterns of English. Think about children again. Before a child says their first word, they spend months listening. They hear the same expressions again and again. Good morning, thank you, see you later. When they finally start speaking, they are not inventing new sentences. They are repeating what they have already heard hundreds of times. This is the natural process, and the same process works for you. Every time you listen, you are collecting material that later becomes your own speech. For example, if you hear the phrase "I'm looking forward to it" many times in conversations, your brain remembers it as a complete package. One day, when you need to express the same idea, the phrase comes out of your mouth without effort. You did not have to think about grammar or translation. You just repeated what was already familiar. This is how listening builds speaking. Another important point is pronunciation. If you try to speak without listening enough, your pronunciation may sound unnatural because you are only guessing the sounds. But if you have listened carefully, your mouth automatically copies the model you heard. It is like singing along to a song. You do not study every note. You just follow the melody you already know. Listening also helps with fluency. Many learners struggle because they translate from their first language before speaking. This makes them slow and nervous. But when you listen often, you begin to think directly in English. You stop translating and start using ready-made expressions. Your sentences become longer and more natural, and your confidence increases. The connection between listening and speaking is also psychological. When you have listened to thousands of sentences, you know that English is already inside you. This gives you courage to speak, even if you make mistakes. You trust that your ears have already prepared your mouth. You understand that speaking is not something separate. It is simply the next step after listening. This is why listening is not only for understanding, it is the foundation of your voice in English. Every word you speak tomorrow is first a word you listen to today. If you want to sound natural, confident, and fluent, the best thing you can do is listen more. Speaking will follow because speaking is the echo of listening. Listening is not just another part of learning English. It is the foundation, the habit that gives life to every other skill. When you listen, you are not only training your ears, you are training your memory, your confidence, and even your ability to speak. Every sentence you hear adds something to your progress, even if you do not notice it immediately. Do not worry if you cannot understand everything. Understanding every word is not the goal. The goal is to connect with the rhythm, to recognize patterns, and to let English become familiar step by step. If you listen every day, even for a short time, you will discover that what once felt strange slowly becomes clear. Remember that speaking is the echo of listening. The phrases you hear today will become the words you use tomorrow. The more you listen, the stronger your voice will become, and the less fear you will feel when it is your turn to speak. So keep listening. While you walk, while you cook, while you rest. Make it part of your daily life, like breathing or eating. Listening is still and will always be the fastest and most natural way to learn English. Trust the process, stay consistent, and let English grow inside you day by day.